Presenting now is Temitope Obalade from the Mountaintop University. Temitope Obalade is an early career scholar and ethnomusicologist. She holds a BA in music and an MA in music theory and composition from the University of Lagos and is currently pursuing her PhD in ethnomusicology from the Mountaintop University under the mentorship of Dr. Oladele Ayorinde. As a performer, she plays saxophone with the MFM High Life Band and sings with the Mountaintop Choral at the Mountain of Fire and Miracles Ministries. As an educator, she teaches saxophone and voice performance at the Mountaintop University. Her research interests are in church music, Nigerian art music, and gender studies. Please welcome Temitope Obalade as she presents Rethinking Modernism through the lens of Nigerian church music, a study of Festus Olusegun Oyebadejo's musical works.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. My topic, Modernism through the lens of Nigerian church music, an introductory note on Festus Olusegun Oyebadejo's musical works. The discourse around African art music is not a new one. From the organ works of Nigerian composer Festus Olusegun, piano works of Hakim Yuba, down to the works of South African composers such as Bongani and Volans, Ghanaian composers such as Ephraim Hamu and Nketia. All these works are centered around modernism. The notion of modernity emerged in the West as evident in the works of Immanuel Kant, 1784, who argued that modernity is marked by the autonomous use of reason, which is the courage to think independently. Central to this movement is the idea of newness in terms of creative and artistic innovation, transformation of old ideas with a new and radical approach, and then experimentation with new ideas. In music, modernity, now described as music modernism, emerged in the 19th century and has been expressed in several ways, from Arnold Schoenberg to Igor Stravinsky to Bela Bartok, who incorporated folk melodies into his works and experimented with microtonality. He also became the link to African modernism. This concept of African art music, particularly, this innovation stretches through colonial borders from the West down to the global South. The concept of African art music, particularly from the lens of Nigerian composers, references the idea of music modernism. However, the discourse on modernity is an all-encompassing conversation, and that is not the focus of my presentation today. My focus today is to examine the ways in which music modernism is understood in post-colonial African society, and particularly Nigerian church music. The idea of music modernism is deeply rooted in the notion of power and foreign privilege. What do I mean by this? The idea has often been shaped by narratives centered around formally trained composers, those who studied abroad, mastered European notation, and returned to merge African aesthetics with Western musical traditions. For instance, Festus Olusegun traveled abroad, studied Western music, idioms, and returned to have a career in African art music, performing, teaching, and composing. Now, we have a lot of others like that, like Hakim Yuba and Laze Kweme. All these studied abroad, and they implemented modernism in the Nigerian music space. So whenever modernism is being discussed within the context of art music and written compositions, the above named and others like them are the definition of the movement. While this narrative is valuable and true to a large extent, it is not the full story, and it risks narrowing our understanding of African musical modernity by framing it through elitist, colonial, or Eurocentric models. Now, what might it mean for us to start thinking modernism through the lens of formerly unschooled composers, local church organists, choir masters, who have equally contributed to the development of music through their compositional ideas, theories, and practices across cities and states in Nigeria and Africa at large? This paper is a part of my ongoing doctoral work, which explores music modernism through the lens of a Nigerian organist and choirmaster, Festus Olusegun Oyebadejo, and it provides a means for understanding modern sacred church music in Nigeria through his compositions, his arrangements, and accompaniment. The study also aimed to investigate the contributions of F.O. Oyebadejo to the development of Christ Apostolic Church music. But in today's presentation, I focus only on a part of the work by bringing a different perspective to the discourse on music modernism, particularly in the African art music context in Nigeria. First, I would like to introduce Olusegun Oyebadejo. Festus Olusegun Oyebadejo was a pioneering Nigerian organist, choirmaster, indigenous church music composer who played a foundational role in shaping the musical identity of the Christ Apostolic Church, CAC, in Lagos. During the second half of the 20th century, he received informal organ and music classes from his father, who was also an organist from childhood in Ile-Ife, and he had the opportunity to practice and perform on the organ in his high school musical activities at CMS Grammar School, Lagos. Operating largely outside of formal Western music institutions, Oyebadejo embodied cultural innovation with practices deeply rooted in local tradition, yet open to transformative engagement with global music idioms. Oyebadejo represents a postcolonial agent of sacred musical transformation. Without the privilege of formal conservatory training, he mastered and internalized Western music idioms such as harmony, counterpoint, and notation, blending them with Yoruba tonalities, indigenous worship expressions, and colonial binary of trained and Pentecostal performance aesthetics. His works resist the colonial binary of trained versus untrained musicians, redefining modernity through his lived experience, practical musical intelligence, and contextual ingenuity. As choirmaster at CAC Tire Lagos, Oyebadejo was not merely a performer or accompanist, he was a musical institution builder. He trained choirs in tonic solfa and staff notation, he built an orchestra from scratch, he mentored emerging musicians, and composed or rearranged hymns and native airs for congregational use. Oyebadejo's musical career was deeply embedded in the Pentecostal ethos of the Christ Apostolic Church. The music at CAC is not merely decorative or liturgical. It is spiritual warfare, healing, teaching, and community building. As Adedeji 2027 explains, CAC music operates under a theology of Holy Spirit inspiration and biblical fidelity. From a theoretical standpoint, Oyebadejo exemplifies Bourdieu's habitus in practice. His internalized music dispositions, shaped by church life, Yoruba culture, and informal training, found expression in a structured religious field, negotiating tradition and innovation. Although a comprehensive analysis of Oyebadejo's composition is reserved for a larger study, even preliminary observations suggest a modernist aesthetic grounded in function and community. In his arrangement of CAC chorus, Oyebadejo experiments the call and response structure rooted in Yoruba oral tradition. He introduced modulating harmonies that reflect a westernized choral sensibility. He used tonic sulfur as a means of training singers, many of whom could not read staff notation when, in the early years of his work with them. And then he incorporated organ pedal points, suspensions, and contrapuntal textures to deepen the spiritual mood of worship. One example includes his arrangement of the chorus, Jesu Lobayo, where a simple 3-line chant is extended into a 6-part chorale with antiphonal entries and cadences that mimic Anglican-style motets, yet retain a distinctly Yoruba tonal quality. To emphasize that being formally unschooled didn't make these art musicians novices in their craft, I would love for you to listen to one of his organ performances in 1992. Thank you very much. From all of this, you will agree with me that it is not out of place to contend for a shift of attention from this top-down model to a bottom-up view, an exploration of how musical modernism also manifested in the practices of non-schooled but innovative local musicians. Modernism in Nigeria, in Nigerian church music, might include vernacular expressions. Just as Oyebadejo exemplifies local agency, not elite exceptionalism, discourse around modernism in art music do not always have to be about the elites and privileged, but also about the local agency and formerly unschooled choirmasters, organists, who has contributed to the development of art music in Africa. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Okay, in case we have questions, please, we can. Oh, Prof. Let's start from Professor Majola.
Thank you very much. That was, when I saw your picture with the saxophone, I thought there would be a little saxophone thing again today. That was fantastic yesterday, by the way. So I can see you're following the trend of Grace Talabi. I know she has a new married. She got married, so Talabi is no longer. But she also looks at the work of this medical doctor in Ibadan who is writing pieces here. Dayo Oyedun, yeah. So, and also Yomi Bello. Actually, Yomi Bello also focused on Oyedun, right? Yeah, okay. So I can see where you're going. And the reason, so first of all, that was an excellent presentation. Yeah, I really enjoy especially how you started from a theoretical perspective, I think in what the readers of your thesis will be looking forward to is a kind of sharp articulation of the differences between the modernism of the formally trained and the modernism of the informally trained. Because the general narrative that you gave doesn't seem to, also applies to formally trained musicians. When you spoke about an engagement with global discourses and also innovation and then using traditional African elements. That applies to Akinyuba. That applies to Fela Shwande. That applies to almost everybody. So we didn't hear the music, especially the one that I think will explain or articulate that difference. So right now it's like, and then this guy, is also elitist. He plays the organ. He went to King's College. He's elitist. Only he didn't study music formally. So what I think you may want to respond to now or work on later is the sharp distinction between these different kinds of modernism, that of the formally educated and that of the informally educated. Thank you. Okay, I thought she would say something.
You want to say?
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate the insight. I was not actually looking for the difference. I was looking for the similarities. The fact that they can do just the same as those who have studied abroad, but they are left out in the curation process. That's what I was looking for. But that's the very beautiful insight I could work with. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. You presented very well. In fact, I was so attracted to your topic. And I said, okay, I'm going to enjoy myself with some level of saxophone presentation. Just like Prof rightly identified, I want to share in that thought. Also, you're interrogating quite a number of things, and I was thinking you will give a kind of dimensional approach to the text and the total composition in terms of the data. I didn't see data. I was only seeing history. So you may want to look at that in your paper. I'm from Obafemi Awolowo University. Adeola Fale is my name. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Because it is still an ongoing work, I am not too much into the analysis of the text and the music yet. But that's why I said from the preliminary research and observations, these are the things that I am able to get. But I am still going into the field. Yes. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Adeyemi from Wits University, South Africa. I just want to ask, since you said the untrained composers, they have the access to the same probably musical depth and knowledge as the trained ones. I'm just wondering, what do you think is responsible? Because those of us that are trained, sorry, sir. Boss. I'm trying to talk. So those of us that are trained, we often feel like we have access to this level of intellectual engagement and we feel like, okay, it's a privilege that we have. But if other people that are not trained also have access, according to what you're saying, what do you think is responsible, and where do those lines meet?
Thank you very much. From practice, because I am a member of the Mountain of Fire Miracle Ministries, and if you attend my church, you would know that music is a normal thing. So I see many people who did not study music, but they are very good musically. Now, the reason for that is early introduction to the practice of music and lifelong focus. For those of us in school, we have other things to talk about or to think about, more like the intellectual discourse we're having now, and many other things, because it's a university, you have to do other things apart from practice. But these people focus only on practice. So they are in their rehearsal rooms for 5 hours a day, 7 hours, practicing how to write, how to write, rewrite, or play a musical instrument. So it gets better and better for them by the day. So it could be, or I believe it is one of the reasons why it seems as though we have the same level of knowledge. But when it comes to intellectual discourses and many other historical facts, they have no idea. This is one of the reasons why these people are not even paid attention to. Like, the difference between Fela Showande and Oyebadejo would be that Fela Showande can write and explain what he did, and even, write a paper, a thesis on what he has done. But this man will just do it for God, in quotes, in church. Yeah. That is it.
Okay, sir.
So I think what this session is teaching you is problematizing your perspective. Because you mentioned a third big factor now, the spiritual fact, the religious part of it. So you have to put these things in engagement with one another as you deal with this topic. What is that lack of training? What does it manifest in terms of the scoring, the musical works they do? And then the other point about, because they're walking in the vineyard of God, that also brings in a different perspective. So everything you have to, consider them as you work on your thesis. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.